Snow White and Rose Red. My lovely daughters, what one of you has, you must always share with the other, and vice versa. I'm Snow White. I'm calm and enjoy assisting my mom in the house. I have a secret. I have precious treasures in the mountain, but I really miss Snow White and Rose Red. I hate talkative kids. I hate the bear trying to take away my treasure. I'm Rose Red. I'm adventurous and always want to be outside finding new things. There was once a lady who lived in a small cottage deep in the forest far away from anyone else. Her loving, lonely cottage, although poor in appearance, had two things of beauty, two beautiful rose trees. In the summertime, one of the trees would flower red roses of passion and liveliness, and the other would bear white roses of calm and serenity. This lady had recently become a widow when she lost her husband, and she now lived alone with her two daughters, who had been named after those two beautiful trees, Snow White and Rose Red. Snow White and Rose Red was very much like the two rose trees that stood in the garden. Snow White was calm and enjoyed assisting her mother in the house. She took pleasure in her own company and had no desire to go anywhere. Rose Red, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She lived for adventure and always wanted to be outside finding new things. Nevertheless, the two sisters, despite their differences, were extremely fond of one another, and whenever they ventured out together, they always did so holding each other's hand. We will always be together. We will never leave each other, Snow White would always say, and her sister always responded with, never as long as we both shall live. Finally, their loving mother would add, what one of you has, she must always share with the other, and vice versa. On occasions, when Snow White and Rose Red would wander outside together, they would often pick red berries in the forest or wander together hand in hand and admire the many animals that crossed their path. They were never frightened of the beasts that approached them. A hare would eat cabbage leaves out of their hands. A deer would walk with them and graze by their side. And a stag would leap merrily past them. No misfortune ever befell these two beautiful girls. If they happened to have wandered off too far and night began to fall, Snow White and Rose Red would never panic, since the forest was their home. They felt safe and secure there and would often find a soft piece of moss to lay their heads down on and sleep there under the trees until the morning sun awaked them. Their mother knew this and felt at ease in the knowledge that the forest would keep her daughters safe. On one particular evening, the girls spent too long picking berries and decided that it would be safer to rest underneath a big oak tree that grew nearby them to make the long journey home. As dawn came to woke them from their sleep. From their sleep, both girls saw an angel-like child in a shining white dress sitting near their bed. Once they were fully awake, the child got up, smiled at them, and disappeared into the forest without a word. As they sat there stunned, They looked around in an attempt to find the angelic child that they had just seen. They both realized that they had been sleeping close to the edge of a cliff and had not noticed it. If they had taken a few too many steps towards the night before or had moved in their sleep, one or both of them would have certainly fallen into the darkness and died. On their return to the cottage, Snow White and Rose Red told their mother everything that they had seen. "You see, my beautiful girls, that child was an angel who looks after good children. He was looking over you as he slept and keeping you safe," she said while smiling that her girls were home safe and sound. As good daughters, Snow White and Rose Red always kept their mother's little cottage clean and tidy, so that it was a pleasure for her to sit inside it. In the summer months, Rose Red would prepare flowers for her mother each morning. She always included a rose from each of the rose trees in the garden. In the winter, Snow White would light the fire before dawn and hang the brass kettle, which shone as bright as gold, on the cooker. During the winter evenings, as snowflakes lined the horizon, Snow White and Rose Red would sit together by the fire. "So go and board the door, Snow White, and close all the curtains, Rose Red, so that the heat of the fire will stay inside and keep us warm," their mother would say, and then she would sit with them and read aloud from one of the books from their small library. There also lived in a house a sweet lamb, who always sat on the floor by their mother's armchair, and an innocent white dove, whose head was always hidden beneath its wings. On one of those winter nights, as the girls were listening to their mother, a loud knock came at the door, and a deep voice called out, "I am very cold. Please let me in. Quickly, go and unboard the door, Rose Red. It must be a traveler who is seeking shelter from the cold," insisted her mother. Rose Red did as she was told, but it was no traveler that stood before her as she opened the door. It was a very large bear. Rose Red let out an almighty scream and ran back inside. She stood behind her mother, where she thought she was safe. As the bear stepped inside the cottage, Snow White and each of the other animals also stood behind the mother. "What do you want?" she said without any fear. "I am very cold, and I simply want a place to keep warm during these cold winter months. I will not harm you. There is no need for any of you to be afraid," the bear replied. "You poor thing, lie down by the fire and warm yourself. Only take care not to burn your coat as you do," the widow said. Then she turned to her daughters and the animals and said, "There is no need to be scared. The bear means you no harm. He only wants to avoid these cold winter nights." The lamb, the dove, and the girls slowly and with some hesitation made their way back to where they had been sitting before the knock on the door. As soon as the bear felt that the animals and children were at ease with his presence, he turned to the girls and asked, "Children, could you please knock the snow from my coat a little? I don't seem to be feeling any warmer despite sitting by the beautifully burning fire." The two girls obediently each took a small broom and began lightly brushing the ice off the coat until it was clean. The bear then stretched himself out in front of the fire and rested, It only took a few evenings until the girls were very comfortable with their new guest, and they began to play tricks on him and to tug at his hair. He became just like a big older brother. Together, they would all roll around on the floor. Sometimes the girls would sit and jump on his back, and when they were feeling very cheeky, they would brush his coat without permission. The bear took this all in his stride, and only if the girls got a little too playful would he say, "Be nice to me, please, girls, otherwise I will become sad and won't want to play with you anymore." The girls had grown attached to their kind, clumsy guest, and so in response to his plea, they would always say, "We are sorry, bear," and they would embrace him with a big bear hug. Every morning, one of the girls would unboard the door so the bear could wander through the forest in the warmth of the winter sun. And then each night, once all the others had gone to bed, the mother would say to the bear, "You can lie there by the hearth, bear. There, you will be safe from the cold and bad weather these winter days are giving us. Good night." The bear was very thankful for the lady's kindness and hospitality. He stayed each night through the winter months. He played with the girls and rested the body beside the warm fire. The family became so used to his presence that they would await his arrival before bolting the front door shut for the night. However, as winter drew to a close and spring flowers started to peek through the last bits of snow on the ground, the girls knew the bear would soon have to leave, and that made them sad. When spring had finally sprung and all the ice and snow had melted away, the big bear said to Snow White one morning, "It is time for me to go now, beautiful girl, and I must stay away until the next snow falls." "But where will you go?" she asked with tears in her eyes. He looked at her and said, "I must go into the forest and go back to my home to protect my treasures from the wicked dwarfs that try to steal them." "Dwarfs' treasure?" she exclaimed. "Yes," he replied. With that, her sister Rose Red entered the room and wondered what was going on. "Today I must say goodbye. The dwarfs cannot touch my treasures in the winter since the ground is frozen hard, and they must seek warmth underground and therefore cannot work." Now that the spring sun had thawed out the earth, they will once again come sneaking around and try to take the treasure which I have worked hard to keep these many years. If my treasures ever disappear underground, they will never see the light of day again. On that note, the bear bade farewell to his new friends. Snow White and Rose Red was very sad to see the bear go, but held in their hands a small piece of his fur that had caught against the board when he left. When they looked at it carefully, both girls thought they could see gold shining through the fur. They were not sure and had wanted to ask, but the bear had run away quickly and was now nowhere to be seen. They took the piece of fur to their mother instead. Once winter had passed and the days became warmer, the mother sent the girls out to collect firewood from the forest one day, hand in hand. They left with a basket that their mother wanted to be filled. Snow White and Rose Red came across a very large tree in the forest. The tree was lying on the ground as if it had been knocked down by a woodcutter or had fallen down because of the strong wind of winter. As they got closer, they spotted something jumping backwards and forwards in the grass next to the trunk, but they could not make out what it was. They knew they had never come across this type of creature before. As they edged forward, they saw what they thought was a dwarf. They had seen pictures in books, but never in life. So Rose Red asked inquisitively, "Are you a dwarf, sir?" "Yes," came a snappy response. The dwarf had an old withered face and a snow-white beard that was so long he had caught it in a crevice of the tree. He was jumping here and there like a captured animal with no way of escaping. The girls looked on in wonder until the dwarf shouted, "Why do you stand there in wonder? Can you not see that I am stuck and need your help?" The girls had remembered the bear's story about dwarfs. Before helping this one, they asked, "What are you up to, little old man?" "You stupid prying nosy girl. That is none of your business," he barked back. Rose Red said, "That is not a good way to get our help, sir." But the dwarf did not care what impression he made. He continued whining. "I was going to split the wood so that my people would have some wood to cook with. I had just driven a wedge into the tree, and while everything was going so well for me, my beautiful white beard got caught, and the tree closed so quickly that I have not been able to release myself. And you girls stand there and giggle and wonder. How strange you folks are." Snow White and Rose Red, being kind and helpful girls, thought it best at least try to help the smart man despite his rude and unkind words. Together they tried very hard to pull his beard out, but it was no use. The beard was stuck tightly into the tree and was refusing to come out. Rose Red then suggested that since the two girls had failed, perhaps a third person might be helpful. "I will run and fetch someone to help us," she said. The dwarf snarled at her idea and snapped, "You foolish girls! You are already two. Can't you think of something better and quicker to set me free?" "Don't be impatient," replied Snow White. "I have an idea." She pulled out some scissors from her pocket and cut off the end of the dwarf's beard. The dwarf was horrified and clearly quite angry with the result, so instead of thanking Snow White, he took hold of a bag of gold which lay among the roots of the tree. Walked away and mumbled to himself, "What uncouth people cut off a piece of my beautiful beard. Bad luck should have come to the one who cut it." "Ignore him," Rose Red said to her sister. "He is an ungrateful little dwarf." Snow White smiled, and the girls continued their mission to find firewood. Some time later, that very same afternoon, Snow White and Rose Red stopped by a small stream to catch some fish for their dinner. Once again, as they drew closer, they saw something like a large grasshopper jumping towards the water as if it wanted to leap in. They ran closer toward it, and upon closer inspection, they realized that it was not a grasshopper at all, but the same dwarf they had crossed paths with earlier that day. "What are you trying to do now?" asked Rose Red. "You surely don't want to go in the water," she assumed. "No, you fool! Can't you see that I am being pulled into the water by just evil fish?" he replied. "I was sitting here fishing when a strong wind blew across the river and caused my beard and the fishing line to become entangled with one another. Then a fish bit the hook, and it is pulling me further and further toward him and the water," he continued. It was clear to the girls now that the dwarf was again stuck and was very close to being pulled under the water by his catch. They had arrived just in time and once again tried to help the dwarf. They spent as much time as they could trying to release the small creature from his fishing line and the fish that was endangering his life. But it was no use. The water current was getting stronger, and the girls had to act fast. Once again, Snow White took the scissors from her pocket and freed the dwarf. And again he was grumpy. "You always took the end of my beard, and now you have taken the best part. How can I return to my people looking this way?" the dwarf asked sadly. This time the dwarf picked up a bag of pearls that sat near him, and just as before, he disappeared into the forest without even saying thank you. The girls, after completing their mother's requests, returned home. Snow White and Rose Red told their mother everything about the dwarf and how rude and ungrateful he had been. Their mother simply said with a smile, "I am very proud of you girls. You did the noble and honorable thing. Only good luck comes to people who are good and kind." Snow White and Rose Red slept much easier after their mother's words, since they had been worried that perhaps they had done the wrong thing. Not long afterward, Snow White and Rose Red's mother asked them to do another errand. This time, she wanted them to go to the local village. The girls needed to buy needles and thread, lace, and ribbons, as their mother was making them all new dresses for summer. The journey to the village was not very long, but it went across a mountain and through some very large pieces of rock, which were strewn about as if someone had been throwing them around like dice. As they were walking among those very same rocks, the girls noticed a bird flying slowly around, and above them the bird seemed to be sinking lower and lower, as if it was going to catch some prey. At last it settled on a rock not far from where the girls were standing and watching. Immediately they heard loud cries clearly from the prey the bird had caught. The girls, being very curious, ran over, and in horror they saw that the large bird, an eagle, had seized their acquaintance, the rude dwarf. It was obvious that the bird wanted to carry its prey off and enjoy the dwarf as its breakfast, but the girls were full of pity and once again tried to help the grumpy old dwarf. The eagle had the dwarf by his shoes, so Snow White and Rose Red grabbed tightly onto his coat and started to pull against the strength of the bird. At last, the bird gave up the fight, released its prey, and flew away. As soon as the dwarf had recovered from his fall, he grabbed his bag full of precious stones. He turned to the girls and said, "Could you have been more careful with me? This is my special Sunday coat, and now it is ruined because of you clumsy girls pulling and tearing it." The girls were used to the dwarf's ingratitude by now, and instead of being hurt by his words, they smiled and went on their merry way. After completing their business in town, Snow White and Rose Red started on their journey home. It was almost dusk, and they would need to walk fast to make it home by sunset. As they crossed back over the mountain and thought through the rocks, they came across the dwarf for the last time. He was in no danger this time, but was sitting and admiring the precious stones which he had laid out across one of the rocks. The evening sun shone upon the brilliant stones, which created a rainbow of glittering colors that the girls couldn't take their eyes off. "Why do you always stand and stare?" shouted the dwarf. Suddenly a deep roar came from within the forest, and a loud growling could be heard. A large black bear was marching towards the dwarf and petrified and wanted to run for the safety of his cave, but the bear was too close. And the dwarf was petrified and wanted to run for the safety of his cave, but the bear was too close. In a loud cry, the dwarf begged the bear, "Please, dear bears, please, dear Mr. Bear, spare me my life, and I will give you all of my treasures, all of the beautiful stones lying there on the rock. I am too small and slim a creature for you to be satisfied with. Eat those girls instead. They are fatter and much tastier than I am." However, the bear did not listen to a single word the dwarf had said, and instead, with a single swing of his paw, put the dwarf into a never-ending deep sleep. This time they could not help the dwarf. The bear was too big and strong for their weak and dainty hands. Then, as the bear turned his attention to them, the girls fled in fear until they heard a familiar voice calling, "Snow White, Rose Red, it is me. Please wait and do not be afraid. We are old friends." The familiar voice came from the bear. It was their bear, the bear that had spent his winter nights playing with them. The girls were no longer afraid and turned to greet their old friend. But it was not a bear that stood before them. It was a handsome young prince clothed in gold. "I am the king's son. I was bewitched by that wicked dwarf who had stolen my many treasures and forced me to roam the forest as a savage bear until I reclaimed the treasures that were rightfully mine. You were the only people that were kind to me during this long and lonely time," he explained. Snow White and Rose Red returned home that evening with the prince. Snow White and Rose Red returned home that evening with the prince and explained everything to their mother. Not long afterward, Snow White married that prince, and Rose Red married his brother. The two beautiful daughters were always together as they had wanted, and as their mother had taught them, they always shared everything. including the treasures the dwarf had stolen. You see, my beautiful daughters, good luck always comes to good people. Their mother told them proudly on the day of their wedding. The end.